Hello, Anna and everyone, to the Inner Knowing podcast. I'm Erin Rogers, where we talk about the invitation back to yourself, connection to your intuition, and give live examples of how people are living in connection with intuition while doing somewhat highly logical jobs. I think everything everyone does is highly intuitive, but that's because I'm biased. Um, Anna, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Erin.
Um, how would you introduce yourself? How do you like to introduce yourself to people with the work you're currently doing or existing in the world?
Yeah, so I started as a yoga teacher and I teach yoga part time. Now I sort of introduce myself as a somatic educator and embodiment coach, and I specialize in women's pelvic floor health.
Okay, we love. And you're currently in Canada with a
Yeah.
possibility of maybe being more movement oriented in and outside of Canada, which is super cool because obviously my Sagittarius heart is like, yeah, go everywhere.
Yeah.
Go everywhere. I met somebody yesterday and we were like talked for a while and then all of a sudden I asked what his astrology was, of course, and he was like, I was like, mine's Sag. He's like, yeah, yeah. You just told me about 100 places you lived in the last 5 years, so yeah. I was like, oh right. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I've been rooted here for 6 years, which actually feels like a really long time for me. So being in Squamish, um, and I am feeling the call, ready to go.
very cool. I'm excited. So I would love to talk about because I think a lot of people, when following their intuition, even something like I started in yoga, and now look where you are. And sometimes it's like, oh, but I don't know what yoga is going to maybe get me, right? I think I've done that a lot. Like, I don't know what this is going to get me, so, but I want to be there. Can
Yeah.
you, if it feels, true for you, can you talk a little bit about the beginning and sort of like how each step either revealed itself to you or kind of intuitively how you stepped into it? Because even since we've worked together, you've really
Mhm.
blossomed into a whole new iteration, and it felt intuitive when you were talking about the whispers. But could you talk about that experience?
Yeah, for sure. And I love what you just said there because I would say, actually, for me, when I started teaching yoga, I had this premonition that this was a step I needed to take,
Mm.
but I had no idea. Like, I had no idea of where it was pointing to, what the end sort of result was going to be. So I've definitely tiptoed into the arena of body work and kind of found where I'm at now. But it came through a lot of transition and a lot of going in the wrong direction and then feeling something internally kind of call to correct it. So, if I really talk about what took me even to yoga in the first place, I was actually living in London in the UK before teaching yoga, and I was working in interior and spatial design. And I was sort of I'd been practicing yoga at that point. I had done a teacher training. Uh, I was terrified when I did the training, like not good at speaking in front of people, not comfortable holding space in front of a large group. So I'd done the training and just told myself, like, I did that to like deepen my own practice, but I'm not going to use it. And
Mm.
then I did this degree in interior and spatial design, and I kind of launched in a direction that was very mind driven of like what I should do. Oh, this is a creative career. It's going to get me to this place.
Mm.
Um, and I sort of landed there and felt like I could do the day to day, but there was a part of me that just felt not turned on, not alive. Um, and so I was in London for 3 years, and it took me about a year to make the decision to create some sort of change or move. And, I think for me, I was suppressing this feeling of like feeling called in another direction for a really long time. And my body started to speak that repression. So I actually ended up getting really sick and had all these sort of health issues that I was going to doctors to in London who like couldn't really tell me what the root was of what was going on in my body. Like major burnout. They label it adrenal fatigue, but no one really knows what to do with that. I was experiencing like hair loss, thyroid issues, low iron, like all this stuff. And so, yeah, it took me about a year of struggling with that, going to a bunch of different practitioners and sort of having this like deeper whisper inside of like, this is just not the way. Like, I felt like I was fighting myself. So, but at this time too, I was like experiencing a lot of that external pressure of like, this is the roadmap that I'm supposed to be taking. This looks really good on the outside. So when I chose to leave London, it was actually still sort of wrapped up in a lot of anxiety of like, I'm going to go in this direction, leave London, move back to Canada, more to just heal my body. And so I moved back here. I moved up to Squamish, and I kind of told everyone I was just like taking a pause and going to continue looking for jobs in design, which I actually didn't do or pursue at all. I started teaching yoga part time. That started to evolve into a full-time thing. My mystery illness within 3 months, like, just started to disappear as I started to listen to myself. I had literally this like bald patch of hair in the back of my head, and it like without even attending to it started to sprout like new growth. So I had this little like alfalfa sprout for a really long time. Um, and yeah, it felt too like once you start to like accept the call, if you want to say that, like once I jumped into the current of teaching yoga, I could just feel this pull of
Mm.
something taking me in that direction. So that became my full-time job. I sort of hustled in that direction for a while, had a bunch of internal things to face as I was doing that in terms of like facing my fear of speaking publicly. Like, I did not jump into the realm of yoga and was like a master at that craft. Like, it took me a long time to like work my way through the internal resistance that I had to like going in that direction. But one thing I always said to people is like, once I started moving in that way, um, I started to feel like more successful each time I finished teaching a yoga class when I
Mm.
had felt scared than when I did when I graduated my interior design degree. Like, I felt like a really important part of me was being faced or online. So, anyways, I taught yoga for years, and then I ended up developing or pulling I thought it was my right hamstring. This was back in 2019, and it was actually a deep pelvic floor muscle. It was called my obturator internus muscle. And I was teaching just a private client and talking through something, hadn't really like prepped my body and just bent forward and felt this like pop right at the insertion point to my pelvis. And at that time, I had this like, this shouldn't have happened to me feeling, like I'm thought at that moment I was pretty attuned to my body. But I also had this premonition, like as I was wanting to like sit in the muck of kind of victimhood and being like, why did this happen to me? It was right when like the world was about to shut down to COVID. I was really like immobilized by this injury. And I just had this like whisper of like, my body is my message, like it's my guide. I got to follow what this is. So I started diving into like what was going on in my own hip, in my own body. And I started by like, I did see a pelvic floor physio who just tried to dry needle a muscle that was like very acutely inflamed, and it was excruciating.
Oh.
So I left that and was like, this is not the answer. Like, I'm not, it felt already I was having these like intuitive nudges that like something's got to open from the inside. This like outside looking in, treating the body was not going to get to like the root or the origin of what was going on. So, to not like, I know I'm already sort of going, this is a long story to your question, but if I sort of condense what happened at this point, like this launched me on this path to start studying somatics, nervous system regulation, realizing like my body, even though I was doing yoga for years, was in this like perpetual guarded state because I was so dysregulated in my nervous system.
Mm.
So once I started to do this line of work, trauma work, energetic work, deeper healing work, my body started to move and shift in ways I had never experienced before.
Mm.
Um, so then that sort of led me down this path to continue following, like, what is this? And if I'm experiencing this, I know other people are as well. And I,
Yes.
for years actually, before this happened, had women that I was working with or teaching come to me sort of complaining, like after a C-section, I would be cueing something in class, old C-section scar, and they're like, I can't even feel or engage my lower abdominals. Like, I don't know what's going on. And
Wow.
I'd have at that time this like, God, I don't know what's going on either. Like, and so it wasn't until I started studying the nervous system and exploring through my own body that I'm like, oh, this is all nervous system based. This is all sort of um, internal felt sense awareness, like a language that we don't normally speak. We're so used to directing from the outside in, turning up
Mhm.
the volume on like what's going on here.
Mhm.
And my call has been to like go deep internal. And it's like, it's something called neuroreception. So, how much are you able to feel the inside of your body? And
Mhm.
that's perception through your nervous system. So, sorry, that's a bit of like a tangent, but
Great. I have some
yeah,
questions.
yeah, please ask.
I think it's really beautiful at the beginning because when you talked about like London, all
Yeah,
I all I could hear, and this is my own experience, is like shoulds. Like you were shoulding your life. You're like, I should do this and I should do that.
big
And
time.
I think 'cause I just want people to listen to hear themselves in our stories is like if you're shoulding your way through things, if your brain is leading but your body says no in that way,
Yeah, yes.
it's very scary.
Yeah,
And we're both proof
yeah,
that it'll be okay. So I just think like interesting, right? Like you said, like that sounds so sexy, your life. You're like you're in London, you're doing
yeah,
the sexy housing things. Ironically, you just went from one structure to another, I would say, right? Body structure from home structure to body structure. There's something in
yeah,
that. But like
big
all
time.
the things that to tell somebody at a cocktail party,
Yeah,
you sounded really great and easy to understand. And
yeah.
often that's the thing that we get stuck in because we want society just to accept us. That's my experience. That without putting words in your mouth, that's your it sounds like a version of your own experience.
Well, and 100%. And what I just want to say to that is like, how scary it is when you take the step to like move into the unknown space where you can't plan or know what's coming next. And it's just this like dedication to be like, I'm going to step with myself in the moment because this feels right now. And then I'm going to wait until that next thing comes in that feels right. And the logical mind wants to be like, don't fucking do that. You don't know
That's
where you're going, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Yeah.
okay. I love that. I always say the irony is my known logical mind
Yeah.
can't get me to the unknown, but I'm so
Yeah.
addicted to the known, right? But yeah, like your unknown, you need to let go long enough to actually receive it.
100%. And I mean, this is really the premise of a lot of the work that I do with people is like, where are we dissociated from feeling our body? Where do we live in the mind as a way of like overpowering the body? How do we start to drop back into that space of like sensation, feeling, trusting emotion? You know, we've learned suppression to push it all down, to
Mm-hmm.
just like not feel, to work from the mind up. And that's where we get stuck, analysis paralysis. Like we try
Mm-hmm.
and think our feelings away, and then the body is not on board, and we have all these mystery illnesses or chronic symptoms come up, and it's like that is trying to speak to you. Like the body has a real wisdom, a real intelligence. When we get those things that we want to label from the mind as like impasse, I just tell people like that is your body's call and be like, come here and feel what content is right in that place. And this is like the psychosomatic, the emotion, the, things that we don't allow ourselves to witness, feel, bring forward kind of thing.
Can we talk about so you use the word whisper.
Yeah.
Some people will have a felt sense. Uh,
Yeah.
Can you tell me, especially now from this somatic experience, Anna living in London, body is literally screaming at you, but your mind, my mind would have been like, we'll just take something to fix it, right? So the
Exactly.
invitation was to feel that the
Yeah.
truth within you seemed to be in opposition with the truth outside of you. But from
Yeah.
somatic, or just like, I think it's interesting for people to hear, like, what did it feel like, or what was happening inside of you that they might also be like, "Oh, is that what's happening when that when that happens? Is that what that is?" Like, can you recall, or can you now, like, reflect on what that actually whisper feels like?
Yeah, big time. Well, I've got a few things to say because, at that time in my life, like I considered myself somewhat, healthy relationship to my body. I exercised frequently. I thought I like ate healthy, like all this stuff.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I was very disconnected from my body. And so the last 10 years of my life have really been this like invitation back into reconnecting with myself to learn how to feel again. So I
Mm,
would say when I say whispers, like that's where it started more for me is like it literally felt like I could feel like the heaviness and a density when I would be making decisions out of my mind. Like I had to grind through something or like push.
okay, I like that.
Uh-huh. And when I knew like there would be something coming in that like a word would pop up or just this like little kernel or a bud of inspiration when I would think of yoga or think of this other direction. And then something in me would kind of shut it down really quickly. And so it started as like just these little moments where I felt a sense of ease in my
Mm,
body amongst a lot of density and kind of like heaviness. And learning to trust the ease was a really difficult thing for me. And I think for a lot of people, like we live in this hustle culture, grind it out, pain is gain sort of thing.
mhm,
And I didn't know how to honor or validate what felt good in my life.
mhm,
And the whispers would come as ways of being like, oh, I like this thing. I feel just naturally drawn to this thing
mm,
where I look at these people doing the thing that I want to do and I like admire them, you
yeah,
know? And then would always think, oh, but that's not for me. And that's where like I find the whispers usually the first thing that comes in and it's quieter. And then the brain comes in really quickly when we're in this sort of tug pull and not moving as like one congruent system.
mm,
Um, the brain can come in right after and start to question that. And then we get in this internal sort of debate in our head. And it was sort of starting to be like, I'm going to trust that first thing
mhm.
that comes in.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, the mind has questions, and intuition is just like a calm truth.
Yeah.
Where you're like,
Yeah.
you wanna question it 'cause that's your mind, but you go, "Okay." Like, to me,
Yeah.
intuition's always like, "Okay." And then your mind's like, "Ha da blah, blah," but that's like you're like, "Oh, it's very distinct." It's
Big
very, like,
time.
aligned, but that's funny. Yeah, the mind has questions.
Well, and like I always find intuition, like just with you saying the word calm,
Mm.
it comes in with like a slow, not rush, just like there's a texture to it that's just like,
Yeah.
And for years, when I was still in this place of like debating myself, the inquiry in my mind would always be like, is this fear or is this intuition? Is it, and this now I look back and like that debate was evidence that it's fear,
That's a
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that like usually anytime I've been hit with something that's intuition, there is no debate. It comes up out of nowhere. And then
yeah,
I get into this like, oh, that can't be real.
yeah,
Even with talking earlier just about like the potential of moving,
yeah,
I can feel right now this like hit of like, it's just time to go.
yeah,
And that's all it's coming in is saying basically. I don't really know what comes next. I don't know 100% the, direction I'm pointing in. But my mind then wants to come in of being like, where? This is irresponsible. You're set up pretty well here, blah, 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 all this stuff. And
mm,
I just know now at this point in my life, like when I'm circuit, circulating in that place, and like I'm out of myself,
Mm.
And so what do I need to do to just like either self-soothe or come back to that place of like, okay, I'm just going to take the baby steps now to follow that it's time.
Yeah. It's interesting because to me, when I had that experience, it was like, "But this is safe." And then it was
Yes.
like "But is it?
Yeah.
Is that actually because to be there and to slowly die as who you are to create safety that doesn't actually exist is
Yeah.
more dangerous for me, and maybe for you, and
Yeah.
some people it might be true.
Yeah.
That was actually less safe ultimately,
Yeah.
because now I live somewhere where my expression is accepted,
Exactly.
allowed, and celebrated. I found a home that worked for like all those things. And you're like, oh, interesting. Because I heard like safety, but s- mm, safety can be a false god if you're sacrificing who you are in exchange for
100%.
safety.
100%. And like, I think, sometimes we label it as safety, but it's just familiar, and sometimes even like our trauma cycles or certain behavioral patterns that are not working for us anymore.
Yeah,
They're safe because they're known. And then what happens when we tiptoe beyond the known?
yeah,
And like, this is a lot of what I do with people because I do work with some sort of like, you know, especially with the nervous system, like heavy trauma.
yeah.
And so, what we are always trying to do, like, we have amazing intuition, amazing access to realms beyond us, sure. We also have a very like animalistic body that
Yeah,
works on this like, am I safe? Am I okay? Am
yeah.
I needing to fight or flight? Or am I able to like rest, digest, be here? So sometimes it gets really confusing for people of like, when you feel a sense of like, this is familiar, this is nice, this is okay.
Mhm,
Sometimes you're still in a box, and we have to learn how to like titrate our way out of that box,
mhm.
keeping a certain sense of like regulation in your body and
Yeah.
kind of meeting the edges of where fear does arise. And fear is usually not what we think of this indicator of like, don't go there. Sometimes it is just an indicator of like deep conditioning.
Mhm.
And you kind of want to meet those edges of what feels uncomfortable.
I like it. My brain goes, I wish I knew what titrate meant. I get what
Oh,
it means. I laughed. I was like, oh, I wish I knew what that word meant. That's a good word. I've never used that before. Small steps. So what does titrate mean?
yeah, small steps. Like sometimes there can be, and it just like to talk about this in sort of a broad sense, like sometimes it's great to leap,
Yeah.
but sometimes when we don't have like a certain foundation, we can almost like re-traumatize old traumas by just being like, I'm gonna do the thing, and then we go into like a dissociative state in our nervous system and kind of collapse into, it's called a dorsal vagal shutdown, where the body's just like, I don't know how to be here. So it's like, let's titrate our way into those bigger realms.
So maybe if we can talk about that, because I spoke as though making massive change is no big deal. But like for you, it sounds like you're like, I spent 10 years. I know for me,
Yeah,
I did a deep 4 years, like deep, like almost not working sometimes to have to go in. And I
yeah,
notice, and I'd love to hear your thoughts of like, Um, there's a famous book by Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap, Upper Limit, but I've actually started to personally reflect on that. For me, and maybe
mhm,
for others, and you can tell me, my upper limit's actually my nervous system. And that I actually get so wigged out that I have
yeah,
to figure out how to regulate my nervous system. And I come from deep trauma in the way that I was like burned as a child. I have a massive crazy like I have this crazy trauma that I don't always lead with, and I actually often forget. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's not impacting me. But now that I'm doing things that are
yeah,
far beyond anyone in my family doing, I
yeah,
feel like my brain is like, just go and do it. And I really notice that it's like, I go with dorsal vagal shutdown where I'm like, I'm beyond fight or flight. So could you
yeah,
chat a bit about that? Because I think entrepreneurship or taking big leaps in life, we're not actually acknowledging
yeah,
that that's happening. We're acknowledging like your mental blocks, like maybe,
yeah,
and your physical body's actually got some limits for good reason until you learn to care and move through them. So could you talk about that? Because I don't necessarily know a lot outside of my own lived experience.
yeah. First of all, I think you're bang on with everything that you've just said. And so what I sort of teach people in general is what lives in our nervous system is like really the unconscious, and it can be past trauma, behavioral patterning, conditioning, like what lives in us that creates the, I want to say, like, capacity for like how we're able to witness the world. And when we have a lot of unresolved trauma, it almost limits our ability to see and perceive what's going on in the present moment. So
Mhm.
when we want to kind of expand those walls to hold more, this is what I was talking about before, of like edging. You're going to bump up against the edges of your nervous system where it's like, we're safe if we stay in this lane. Most of us think that because I can only stay regulated when I'm here, it means stay here. And it's like, no, there is so much to live beyond that. But
Mhm.
we have to go and kind of like hunt for those places that feel on that edge, but then not just blow past that and
Mhm.
go into that dorsal vagal shutdown. So, dorsal vagal shutdown happens when, from a physiological standpoint, it's like we have blown past our capacity to the point that like fight, flight are the first responses of like defend, protect, or for a lot of women to like fawn. And dorsal vagal shutdown is the form of freeze, where your body has come to a point of like overstimulation where it's like, I have no choice here but to shut down. It's like playing dead, basically,
Mhm.
because it's like so much overwhelm, so much intensity in the system that you collapse. And so I used to experience this too, of like when I first started teaching yoga, I would stand in front of the room having rehearsed like religiously. I had to kind of like overwork, prep for things. I couldn't yet move just like naturally, intuitively. It took me a
Mhm.
long time to get there. So I would like plan religiously for a class and then get in front of the class and stand up and start speaking and go brain fog completely out of my body. Like I can't hold on to a sense of myself with all these people looking at me. So
Mm.
the steps that I had to learn how to take were first like, how do I start to regulate my breath? When I feel the shutdown coming on, how do I come back to my body?
Mm.
Starting to work with my physiology first then allowed me to start to play with that realm over time in a different way.
Mhm.
Um, but when we talk about this titration piece, like I think it needs to be emphasized. Like sometimes it's like the big leap happens of like the big choice to change direction. But then it's like the slow tiptoeing as you learn to bring all of yourself on board as
Mhm.
you start to actually make that your reality. And we are going to have moments of coming up against resistance, coming up against fears, coming up against the parts of us that are like, this is, I am not okay if I tiptoe in this direction.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Or maybe I didn't sort of
I
localize
always I always think of it as like that version of me has never experienced that thing. And so
100%.
I have to actually learn who I am, maybe
Yeah.
even slightly if I've maybe had a trauma that's slightly shifted, I still haven't responded yet before. Like having grace for that I am responding from a new version of me because I released something
Yeah.
or I chose a new perspective or I discovered something and then like but that part of me has never responded. So even that takes effort and like kind of
Mm.
reminding myself as someone who is a like blow past it and then like get wigged out and I have
Yeah.
white knuckled my way through life. Um
Yes.
it was when someone explained to me that a healthy nervous system is not to be consistently regulated, but how soon can you return to regulation?
Yes. Yeah.
Was the grace I found in not also feeling bad
Exactly.
when I had a reaction. Because it was like, because then it would just like double down. I'd be like, well, how can I have capability, but I can't actually action? It must be a real defect versus like, hey,
Yeah.
your
Yes.
body's talking to you. Could you pause, reflect, and be with that? Because
Yes.
ironically, you'll move through it sooner.
Yes.
The overlay of judgment, shame, or whatever else I was overlaying on it. So that's been my own internal work to try to accept
Yeah.
that titration is probably the way, especially if I want to feel feminine and for me in that like softness versus like I have a 24-hour masculine cycle and if I just punch my way through and all of a sudden
Uh-huh.
whatever I was, 36, and I look like a shell of a human because I've been punching my way through life, and who I am and
100%.
my body and my emotions were never considered. And it's like, well, that ain't it. I don't know much,
No,
but that ain't it for me.
100%. No, and I agree with that fully. And like, that's the thing. I love what you said about like a healthy nervous system just means like how quickly we're able to return back to regulation when we get dysregulated. But like, like anything in life, our nervous system is meant to activate and then deactivate.
Mhm.
That is what brings us into mobilization, movement to create change. And then it's about coming back to rebalance, to rest and digest. But it's not all about just being in that like rest and digest all the time. And the more you start to do that, I literally think of it as like carving out new space. So
Mhm.
when you get a little out of your capacity and can bring it down, it's starting to like digest that place
Yeah.
that is bringing you out of regulation. Um, yeah, I
It's like
had
a
one other
muscle.
point, but
When you
it'll
tear your muscle at working out, right? You tear your muscle, it repairs. Like it to me, I'm like, oh, it's a similar concept of like you have to lift the weight to put the strain, but you also need the rest to let it repair.
100%. Well, and that's the thing, our past trauma live in our nervous system, meaning that like sometimes, it can be so intertwined and interlaced with the unseen layer of our
Mhm.
life that like it is when we talk about triggers, it's like in a moment when you're triggered, what's happening is that you're sensing something in your present moment that feels very similar to an unresolved experience from your past. So that will literally start to color or jade your perception of what's going on in the present moment of
Mhm.
unsafety in the body. And so it's not bad when we get to those points of triggers. It's learning how to move with that, how to bring that old content forward so it is not coloring the present moment. So we actually want to find those places, you
Mhm.
know?
I have a slightly adjacent question. I hope adjacent's the right word.
Yeah.
My question is about all of this happening, but obviously the physicality of it, and for you, the pelvic floor. And I don't think I fully understand if it's just the meeting point in the body, but like why? Because I found pelvic floor work transformational, shocking, but transformational because of just like my very conservative upbringing in some ways, but also that's where like, so can you tell me
Mhm.
what's happening in the hip pelvic floor? Obviously, it probably could be a whole episode, but just that curiosity of like, so all this is happening, nervous system, da da da. But the pelvic
Mhm.
floor is like, to me, is like, you can get your shoulders rubbed as many times as you want, but if
Mhm.
you never address the pelvic floor, your neck's going to be tight forever. So,
Exactly.
like, could you give me a what's going on there, or why that's actually such a beautiful place for us to work within?
Yeah, big time. So I like to kind of explain it to people like this, because most of us, just male, female, whatever gender you want to identify, most of us have gripped pelvic floor. It is more common than you think and not something people are talking about at all.
Mhm,
And where I like to just start by saying is like, when you are a child, you come into this world fully feeling, fully sensitized to your body. So the
mhm,
fact that we get to a point of adulthood and we lose some sort of sense of sensation or relationship to our pelvis, to our pelvic floor, that means that there is something coming up that has taken us out of that relationship and deep connection to self. Does that
mm,
make sense?
mhm,
So when we talk about dysregulation in the nervous system, our nervous system is our sensory perception tool, allowing us to communicate with our external environment, take in what's going on around us, also connect to our internal landscape. If we are in constant dysregulation, meaning our nervous system is activated in fight or flight or shut down, that is communicating to the body a level of like, I'm not safe.
mhm,
What happens? Nervous system is going to um, communicate with your fascia, with your muscle tissues. It's going to hold a degree of tension as though your body is guarding and protecting.
mhm,
So when we are activated, and this can happen we all are trying to function at the conscious level of like what's going on around us, society, what is permissible behavior. What this can do is take us out of connecting to our body, out of like sensing even how gripped we are, because we're so turned on in the mind and dialed down in these internal sense of awareness of the body. So most people have this unconscious pattern. I call it the like fetal position, where tucked tailbone, pelvic floor is gripped and pulled up, collapsed shoulders, and collapsed in the chest. And so this is something you can be functioning, you can be walking around in the world. Your body is on the unconscious level, not open though. And the pelvic floor is this place of like, it is our root chakra. It is our connection to, am I safe to be here? Most of us don't really pay attention to those like base level regulation of the nervous system. Like we haven't been taught this. And so the body gives a signal unconsciously in our posture, I'm not safe. That's sort of a more physiological, like broad stroke to talk about it in. If I sort of localize it for people, like a lot of people have sexual trauma. There is a lot of just on the whole, societally, like repression around our sexuality, repression around self-expression, creativity. This all lives at your root and second chakra. Like how free are you to be in the world, feel safe in who you are, express who you are? This is all reflected in how we hold tension there. It's like a gripping to really hold on when we haven't learned how to just like land in the world and feel safe enough to navigate based on the present moment, which is sort of an ethereal thing to say, but like when the body is gripped like that, we're not living in the present, we're living somewhere else. We're living in our traumas, we're living in our past.
And I would say from my perspective, because I care about intuition, part of intuition I love is actually it'll show you that something's happening, because you can't actually access your intuition with much ease if you're even physiologically expressing as fear.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, it's even
Yeah.
like it's how you find a pelvic floor therapist or how you find yoga or when you start doing cat cow every day. Like it could be as complicated, but actually it's all signals like we talked about. And so I just think intuition's a fun way to create safety and authenticity and self-trust. And
Yeah.
I know if I'm tight, tense, and like that, even for
Yeah.
me, I'm like, oh, I can't access it the same way
Yeah.
because, chi, there's no flow
Exactly.
because your body's like, I have a limited resource of it. So I have to physically do this until I know I'm safe enough to like basically energize up again to like level up my energy. Like that's how I have to see it in those terms of almost gamifying
Yeah.
it so I get it. Um, and for me, the intuition's a really clear signal. When I'm just looping in fear, probably even my body's expressing in fear for whatever reason. I need to unwind that as part of like a process.
Well, and like here's the thing I want to say to that is like I 100% agree with what you've just said. And most of us are coming out of this conditioning of this, as we've been talking about at the beginning of this conversation, like outside external environment, shoulds impressing in on the body, trying to fit ourselves into these boxes rather than learning how to tap in deeply to intuition, to who you are, to what your expression is meant to be in this world. Like, I really think our body is meant to be this vehicle for self expression, for us to relate to the world around us. Usually, this means we have to go and do the excavation work of like what has taken me out of feeling permissible to express from like that deep core of who I am. Most of us shut that down and then operate out of like the shoulds. And so it's like, okay, can I come back in, figure out everything that has taken me out of being who I am, listening to those whispers, hearing my own internal call. When we think about our sexuality, our life force energy, that eros, like that is what we are meant to stoke as like a fire internally and learn how to like bring forth through our body out into the world as like, hey, this is my expression,
Yeah.
you
Beautiful.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's this neurologist named Robert Scare, and
Okay.
he writes the book The Body Bears the Burden. And he's famous for a quote saying, like, unfortunately for our species, our cages are cultural and of our own making. And it's like, exactly. So, how
Mm,
do we start to unwind that? Because the body holds the impression of that like cultural caging.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We got like 10 more episodes in here, but I'd love for you to like, I feel like you're coming to a close, and I'd love for you to share like from your lived experience, from the beautiful body of work you do, like what's one thing you would invite people to take away or even just consider? Or I had a mentor once say try on like a sweater because you can always take it off. But what would you want to offer, have them take away from your own perspective?
Yeah, I love what we've talked about today. Just in that, like, accepting life is like the process of sometimes like delayering, finding your way back to yourself. Like, it is not about the one and done move. It is accepting
Hmm.
that flow of like inquiry and curiosity, um, to get to know yourself on a deeper level. I
Hmm.
think that's a big thing that always comes forward for me. Like, I was even interviewed on a podcast, like maybe half a year ago, and it was about like reclaiming your voice. And we're so obsessed with these, as we've been talking about today, like momentary leaps of like, when did you make the choice to do the big thing and going in the different direction? And I love what we've circled around, because for me it's always like, it's the little nudges, it's the little redirections, and then taking off more and more layers as we start to continue to walk
Hmm.
more and more in alignment. But I,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm humble enough at this point in my life to know that like I have not yet arrived, but I'm like really intrigued by the process that is continually leading me somewhere. And I
Yeah.
want to go into those deep dives of like how much I can know and discover about myself.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Um, where can people experience the work that you're currently offering, or if they want to get curious about what future works, like where are you existing in the world work wise, and what would you like to share today?
Yeah. So I work with people one on one online. You can find me on my website. So myname.com. Anna, and last name is Gouin, Gouin. I always have to spell that for people. I'm on Instagram under the same handle. And in the next year, I have sort of an online course that I'm teaching for women's pelvic floor health, scar tissue remediation, body work, and it's called De-armoring Your Pelvis. I'm really excited. That's sort of coming out in March. And then I've got 2 retreats that I'm hosting, one on a little island in BC in Canada in May, and then one in Portugal next October.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Yoga and pelvic floor?
Yeah. The sort of a mixture of like yoga and somatic work.
Okay.
Um, yeah. Oh, and that's another thing. I teach yoga still once a week, for Y Yoga in North Vancouver. So I still have my hand in that, and it does sort of structure the retreats that I hold of, you know, bring you into your body, and then we do the deeper dive from that point.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Well, thank you for taking the time and sharing your
yeah.
perspective and lived experience. I'm sure, invaluable for everyone listening. I know I took a lot away today. So thank you so much. Thank you for being on. We'll have to do this again because I'm like 95 other questions we could go into.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.